Yo, welcome back to another Pokemon Scarlet and Violet VGC video. I'm your host, Jose Rocks, and today I'm going to be getting into Regulation G Part 2 tier list. So haven't done one of these in a minute, so if you guys like this type of content, go ahead and leave a like and drop a comment below. Let me know that if you guys want me to do more of these, because I could rank all the viable Pokemon that are going to be in the format that are not restricted, right? If you guys want to see that video, just let me know in the comments. But today we're going to be ranking all the restricted, and I have a set of criteria that I like to use when I do my rankings. If you guys have been here since the beginning, you know that this is the way that I do my rankings, where I have them in these different 5 different tiers, right? Or 6 different tiers, sorry. With the banned tier just being mons that are usually banned that appear in the list. It doesn't look like we have any of those this time, right? So nothing's gonna go in those, so we're just gonna be using these 6 categories. So our first category is gonna be the S tier, which is the must-have answers for busted. These are gonna be the best mons in the format that if you don't build a team with an answer into them, you can just lose games, right? The A tier is gonna be these mons are good on every single team. While the meta might not revolve around them, they're still really good and still have to be respected, but you don't necessarily have to build an answer into it with your team, right? Next is going to be B tier, which is they play their role really well, they're reliable. These are going to be the restricted or just Pokemon in general that are reliable, that you don't necessarily have to have them on every team, but when you bring them on a team, they actually play their role pretty well. They don't really hold you back like that. The C tier is going to be fits on one type of team niche. These are the mons that only work on one specific archetype, and if they are caught in like other archetypes, then they kind of like hold the team back, right? And D tier is going to be decent, but something else does its job better, a wannabe. These are the mons that are, while they're not inherently bad, they have other mons that you find more success with if you just use those mons instead, because they do their job, which is the same exact job that they want to do but better. And the last is the F tier. If you want to win, don't use this, unviable. These are going to be the mons that pretty much you're going to lose games if you use them, and the only reason that you would probably use them is like maybe to make content or just because it's your favorite mon, right? But usually those are going to appear in the F tier. So getting started off with our tier list, we're going to go with Calyrex. I'm going to say it's a B tier right now. I don't want to say it's A tier because I don't think it's good on every single archetype, which is usually sun type. But I don't think that it's niche because it does operate. Of course, it operates on sun teams because it is a sun user. So you're going to always have something that can take advantage of the sun. But think about the Miraidon team that won Worlds, right? It really didn't use mons next to it that took advantage of the electric terrain, right? So I think that if people can start to build around Calyrex and not usually really rely on the sun, even though it's hard not to, then maybe you can find like another really good team that can make Calyrex really good. But for now, I think it plays its role well as a sun setter. It does, activate Raging Bolt, activate Flutter Mane, activate Chiu's fire type attacks, just makes them do more damage. Activates Ogerpon Fire's Ivy Cudgel where it does more damage, right? And it just enables like a lot of different things like Lilligant, Chlorophyll, Scovillain, Chlorophyll, what else? Venusaur Chlorophyll. It's just a lot of It's just a lot of different strategies that can be enabled with Calyrex. So I'm gonna say it's B tier. Miraidon, I think it's S tier. We have to put respect on it. The last Worlds that took place was in Regulation G, and Miraidon was able to win Worlds pretty convincingly, right? It was a really good mon, not really a lot of checks, like natural checks to it. Some of the checks that you can bring to it, like ground types or grass types, you have mons on your team that like Urshifu and Ogerpon that can really deal with those, right? So it's really good, and you don't necessarily just have to build an electric terrain team around it. You can just go with like standard mons that are just good in the format and still find success just with Calyrex just benefiting from electric terrain, and then the electric terrain just benefiting the rest of the team as far as preventing a Mungus or sleep from happening, right? But other than that, like they don't really take advantage of the terrain. So this is a really good mon. You really got to have answers for it, because Terra Electric Volt Switch can just one-shot so many different things in the format, and it's very hard to pin down when it's switching out like that, right? So you guys really got to respect it. I think that Terrapagos, is I want to say C tier, but since it's not just fits on those Protect the King teams with like double fake out and redirection, it can function with like choice specs on a hyper offense team next to like Flutterman and Chiyu. I want to say it plays its role well as just being a powerful special attacker that can take a lot of hits and deal a lot of good damage back, right? So I want to say it's B tier. I haven't used it yet in the previous regulation G. I may build a team around this regulation G, but I just ain't found the right way that I want to use it, right? And every time I feel like I play against it, I feel like it's very easy to beat, and I don't know. It doesn't feel that good to me, but I think that it just needs a buff in its stats. I think that its special attack is a little bit too low, and its speed is a little bit too slow, but it is like a more bulky mon, so maybe it shouldn't be that fast, but I do believe that as a restricted, it should hit a lot harder than it does without having to set up calm mines, right? Next we have Mewtwo. So Mewtwo for me is gonna be D tier. I don't want to say it's F tier because you can find some success with it if you just really build a hard like side spam team around it. But I do think it's D tier because Calyrex, Shadow, and Lunala both do its job a lot better than it, and it's kind of hard to pick this over those, right? As far as being a psychic restricted, it's just completely outclassed by them, and I honestly think it needs a new ability, like a rework. You don't really need to change its stats, but just give it an ability that gives it stab on like all types of moves, like something like Stellar Terror, but as an ability, right, where you get stab on every type of move, because it gets like so much good, like really it gets really good move coverage, like Flamethrower, Ice Beam, Dark Pulse, Earth Power, Fire Blast. Like it gets so much coverage that if it was able to really take advantage of that, then it would have its own niche because it just gets stabbed on all that. You don't really have to change the stats because the stats are really not that bad. Lugia, I didn't say outclasses Mewtwo because even though it is a psychic restricted like Calyrex and Lunala, it does something different than those do, because it's like more of so of a bulky setup sweeper that is just unkillable, right? And while Lunala actually can do that, Lunala is more known so to be the psychic one that plays in Trick Room. Lugia that really doesn't play in Trick Room like that, right? So I want to say that it's C tier. It only fits on those setup teams. But I used it in the previous regulation G, and it wasn't bad at all. So I don't want to say it's D tier. If it gets set up with a couple calm mines and with Aeroblast and Earth Power, it's very hard to deal with, very hard to remove. And if you just pair it with something like Fake Out and Intimidate, then it's able to survive on the physical spectrum as well. I want to say Ho-Ho's also going to be C tier. It's going to only really fit, I think it's better than Lugia though, but it's only going to fit on Sun teams. I think it hasn't been explored enough in the previous regulation. I plan to build a team around it and showcase how it can be good. I do think that it needs to get away from just going for Grass Terror and just needs to lean a little bit more into its offense and for it to find success, and then just protect it from like rock type attacks with your other teammates, right? So I think that it can be good. I think it'll be really good as a secondary restricted on like restricted teams, because Sacred Fire burn is just so powerful, right? Just it's like a buff Entei. Just of course it's 4 times weak to rock, but the flying typing can come in handy in a lot of different situations that Entei wouldn't have access to, right? Just having like ground immunity, fighting resist, those type of coverage is just allows Ho-Oh to be able to switch in more than what Entei could switch into. I'm gonna say Kyogre's A tier. Rain has not been explored enough, and I believe that Kyogre can really shine in a format like this, especially the Choice Scarf and Choice Specs variants have not been explored enough. A lot of people have just been sticking to Mystic Water, Assault Vest, and Leftovers. But I do think that with Kyogre having 5 different items that can be viable on it, it's hard to pin it down in like a best of 1 format where you don't know what the item is on Kyogre. So I think it can really thrive more so in the best of 1 format because of how many items it can run, right? But I do think Choice Scarf and Choice Specs need to be explored a little bit more, and I think it's a tier mon. Groudon, I'm gonna say is niche. It only fits on Sun teams or those gimmick teams that use like Sableye with Gravity. I think that Groudon has really fallen off a cliff. I did think that it was gonna be good in Scarlet and Violet, but Koraidon is just a lot better than it, right? But I don't want to see Groudon as D tier because it actually still is good, especially at enabling like Sun strategies. But it's just a little bit gimmicky. And Precipice Blaze, if it was just 100% accurate, kind of like how even though Kyogre has Origin Pulse, it gets Water Spout. Groudon doesn't get like a physical spread move that's based on his HP. Eruption is a special type attack, right? So you don't really want to be using that. So that's why Kyogre with the water spout can be a lot better than Groudon because it doesn't just rely on Origin Pulse, but Groudon completely relies on Precipice Blades, right? And that kind of like hinders it a little bit. Rayquaza, I've been using this, right, and it feels really good. It's like a more powerful Dragonite. Just it can be faked out and intimidated, but you can run like Clear Amulet and just run Protect, right? Just get around Fake Out and Intimidate. And this mod can be really good, like next to Chien-Pao. It does a lot of damage with extreme speed. If you get a Swords Dance off, it's like it KOs everything, right? And it pairs really well with Chien-Pao because Chien-Pao can just run Throat Chop and then threaten the Ghost types that try to tear in the Ghost in front of Rayquaza. And being turned into normal makes you immune to Astral Barrage, which also gives you a pretty good niche into Calyrex Shadow, especially if you're running like some type of coverage move for it. So I think that it could play its role well. It's just a physical sweeper on those Chien-Pao teams. And I think it's a little bit better than these in my opinion, just because I've been playing with it. I actually think it's better than Terapagos. That's just my personal opinion. I know overall Terapagos may be more consistent than this because it's not threatened by getting KO'd by a random tech ice move. But a lot of people actually are teching ice moves to deal with Miraidon, right? So it does run into that. But like I said, you're most likely going to be tearing this for the most part, unless you can like see that your opponent can't possibly have an ice type attack. Then you maybe might think of not tearing it, right? But I think it is a Terra Hog because no material E-Speed just does so much damage from this. Next we have Origin Dialga. I think it's also C tier. It only fits on those Trick Room teams, even though it's not that slow. Its best niche is gonna be like playing on the Trick Room teams. I haven't got to play with it myself yet, but I do want to build a team around it and see like how high I get up on the ladder with it. Then I might come back and like change my opinions on it. But it's a reason that you don't really see it because most people are not using it because it's really not that good. Dialga, this one's gonna be D tier. If you want to use Dialga, just use this. It's just a better, bulkier version of it. It does the same thing it wants to do. This is actually, I don't want to put it in B yet because I haven't played with it, but I am building a team around it. And based on how well it does, I may move it up to B, but it feels pretty decent in testing, but it doesn't feel amazing, right? Sometimes I just don't even, the team that I have built around it more so wins the matches before I even have a chance to actually use this mod. So that may just be, my team building, but I haven't really had a chance to bring it out. And when it does come out, I actually probably didn't win that match. But a lot of the times when I've winning with this thing on the team, it hasn't even come to the match. So I haven't really, maybe one or two games I won actually because of this mod, right? So I need to play with it more, do some more testing before I can put it any higher than C. Palkia, same. It's going to be D tier. It's better than these two, right? I think Mewtwo's the worst out of these three. This is just a better version of Palkia. Unless you want to play like Trick Room, this Palkia is better at playing like the hard Trick Room matchup. But if you don't want to play Trick Room, this one's just a faster, harder hitting Palkia, right? Giratina, D tier. It's not in C tier with these. Also, its other forms, F tier. You really don't want to use that Giratina. If you are going to use one, use the offensive one because it can threaten Calyrex Shadow with Terra and having like Shadow Sneak. It's pretty threatening, right? That alone gives it like a little bit of a niche. So I actually might just let's still D tier. I think you should. You're gonna use a Ghost Restricted. Just use Calyrex Shadow. The Psychic typing on Calyrex Shadow works a lot better than the Dragon typing on the Giratina, in my opinion. Reshiram, I think it's gonna be a D tier as well. So one of the, if you want to use a powerful fire attacker in the sun, you should probably just use Ho with a clear amulet. Sacred Fire is a lot more accurate than Blue Flare, which is 85% accurate, which can miss. And with it not being able to hit double targets, like missing that just feels so huge, right? So I honestly don't think you should be using that. I don't want to say that Kieran White outclasses it, because Kieran White plays like an ice type mon. This one more so plays like a fire and dragon, right? So they don't really have the similar role like Zekrom and Kieran Black do. So Zekrom's also gonna be a wannabe. Um, yes, but Zekrom's wannabe is different because Kieran Black actually plays this role a lot better. So I'm gonna say Kieran White is gonna be C tier. It's a really good mon. It really plays well on the snow teams, but you don't necessarily need it on those teams. And it is like one of the most powerful special attackers in the game, right? So you got to put some respect on its name. I have lost to it just not being prepared for its damage output, especially with a life orb. Like this thing can really sweep if it's going first. Kieran Black, also want to say B tier. I think that this mon is pretty good. It's underused because a lot of people aren't giving it a try because they're still traumatized by it just being, you know, intimidated by Incineroar in Gen 8, a Clear Amulet not existing, and then just being able to be one shot by Zacian even if you Dynamax, right? That's kind of what these two ran into. That if you were restricted and Zacian one shot you with the Hemoblade, then it was kind of hard to use you, right? Other than Calyrex Shadow, which can set up Trick Room to move before. Um, Zacian, these two necessarily don't like to play in Trick Room, so they're playing in a field where Zacian is at its best when Trick Room is not up, right? So that's why Calyrex I saw a lot more play, even though it was weak to Behemoth Blade 2, other than these two, because these play on the same spectrum as speed spectrum as Zacian, and then they just get one shot by it, right? So that's why you didn't really see a lot of this. But I think that with Terrestrialization and Clear Amulet, like there's a lot more success that you can find with these two in this format. So I do think they're B tier because I've been playing with them and I played against them right now, and they seem pretty good to me. This is gonna be F tier. Just use any of the other dragons. Honestly, it's not complete because it needs to fuse with these two in order to be its best form. So this Kyurem is a lot better. Cosmog and Cosmon don't. I believe that's his name. Don't use those. Not viable. I want to say right now I have seen not a single Solgaleo, right? And I think that's because as being a restricted steel type, Zamazenta and Zacian both outclass it, right? And even though it is immune to Intimidate with its ability, it's like Clear Body, full metal body or something like that. It's just not good enough to make it viable. Terrestrialization is interesting on it, but I haven't seen anybody really test it out, and I haven't tested it myself. I will give it a try because I'm a Leo and I like lions, so I always love Solgaleo, especially in Sword and Shield. Like using this with like weakness policy and Dynamax, it felt so good with having access to max Quake and max Steel Spike to get special defense boost and a defense boost whenever you want it. It just was really valuable with this with weakness policy. So I may give it a try. I think maybe a weakness policy set can still be good on it, but I think it needs a Bulldoze user, right? Like a Scarf Bulldoze user. I know that seems kind of niche, but I think that's the best way to use it, like Scarf Bulldoze into weakness policy, right? But when you're doing that, you also you need to have a terrestrialization that still makes you weak to ground, but gets rid of like the ghost weakness, right? Because if you're just not tearing in front of Calyrex, you're not gonna one-shot it. Well, I guess if you have a Scarf Bulldoze user, you break the sash and then you can one-shot it. But if it has redirection, it's just gonna one-shot you back, right? You making Calc to survive like modest choice specs Astral Barrage, but that may be compromising a lot of Solgaleo stats. So I don't really know. I haven't even tried to test around and build around it, but I will give it a try. If you guys are interested in seeing like a Solgaleo type team on this channel, let me know with a comment below, and I'll go ahead and do that for you guys, just to see how good it can be. But I have seen nobody use it, so I haven't lost to it or played against it to see how it can be used, and I haven't tried it myself, so I really can't do anything but say it's a wannabe because Zacian and Zamazenta feel better as steel types. Lunala, I think Lunala is going to be a very good. I think it's the best Trick Room setting. Well, second best Trick Room. It's the best Trick Room setter that's not Calyrex. That's a restricted, right? So if you want a Trick Room option that's bulky and can hold its own, you should go with Lunala. It's not a wannabe because even though it does share the same typing with Calyrex Shadow, it plays a completely different role. It likes to play on Trick Room, and I think that is pretty good. So I want to say it's B tier because I've seen a lot of people build like really powerful and unique teams around Lunala, and it just feels fun to watch. And Lunala, in my opinion, is like a really cool restricted. It's one of my favorite restrictors after like Kieran White and Zacian. I think it might be my third or fourth favorite restricted because I do like both Solgaleo and Lunala from Gen 7. So it's up there. It's probably tied with Solgaleo, but right under Kieran White and Zacian in my opinion. Next we have Necrozma Dustmane. Dustmane is going to be better than Solgaleo because of its ability. You can run a Clear Amulet on it to get rid of Intimidate, to give it a similar ability, like similar play to Solgaleo, but it's a lot more bulky because its ability makes it take like half damage from a super effective attack. So I do think that is niche because it fits on like those Trick Room teams as well. But you could run like a Dragon Dance set, which that in itself is niche because it really only works in like closed team sheet, because Dragon Dance won't be that good when your opponent doesn't think that you're trying to set up Trick Room, right? So I think that this is also C tier. It's only going to fit on the hard Trick Room teams. I think it may be better than Dialga. I haven't used it myself either. The only one I've tried out is Lunala, out of the Gen 7 legendaries. So I don't know how good it can be, but even though it has a different ability than Lunala's Shadow Shield is a lot better than its ability that halves the a damage of super effective attacks, because dark type attack is still gonna just one shot you, and this can actually survive like a dark or ghost type attack with this ability, so that's really cool. This is gonna be F tier. It's not complete. Just use the other Necrozma, Dawn Wings, and Dustmane. Zacian. I think Zacian is the top of B tier. It feels a lot better than these, and even though it is weak to Intimidate, Zacian now can like play in a way where it's with like Regidrago and, you know, like Annihilate or something that can get rid of Intimidate, or even like Ogerpon, right? It likes to play with these type of teammates because they can take advantage of the Intimidate and make people not want to bring their Incineroar, and Zacian can just thrive. It is the second fastest restrict, and a lot of people don't realize that it's really fast. Like, if Calyrex is not on the field, it's outspeeding all of the other restricteds, and I think that's a role that it can play because it can threaten to one-shot Miraidon, right? And a lot of other restrictors can't really say that they can do that because they're not as fast as Zacian is, right? And if Miraidon doesn't tear, you can just one-shot it with a Play Rough, and it does take a. You should try this with like a coaching strategy, which can, you know, increase the viability of Zacian and having to deal with Intimidate. That way you can open up all this move slots, because it really wants to run Play Rough, Behemoth Blade, and Sacred Sword. Play Rough just because it threatens the Miraidon, right? So you need to have something else to boost up his attack rather than running Swords Dance and then dropping Play Rough, because you never drop Sacred Sword, because being able to ignore boost and ignore evasion is just so good to have on Zacian, and Behemoth Blade is just his signature move, right? So I think that Zacian just needs to be played a little bit differently. More people are actually giving it a try, and they're seeing that I think that really good players play really well with Zacian. I think that Zacian is going to be an amazing in Sword and Shield. It was usually the number one, and all the other restrictions that played with it were the number twos, because Zacian was the best Pokemon in the game. But now Zacian feels like it's going to be like the best number two to have like next to another restricted, because I think that it's going to be a good partner for them, because you can have other restrictors to deal with Incineroar, or you can also just bring mons on the team that help you deal with Incineroar. And then Zacian is like one of the best in-game sweepers. Like, oh my god, I almost hit rank number 1 with it on like a Dondozo Regidrago team, and that team felt amazing, right? Regidrago forcing things to Terra and a Fairy, and then you just being able to remove fairies with steel type attacks with one hit. So Zacian is really cool, and like I said, it's my favorite restricted. It's the restricted that I played against when I came back to the game in Sword and Shield, and it was the most dominant Pokemon I've ever seen, right? As far as competitive, because I didn't play competitive in the other generations, and I stopped playing in Gen 5 casually and came back Gen 8. And so what I've seen, Dynamax, something that brought me back to the game that I was interested in during the pandemic, and also I got Sword, right? So I had to play with Zacian, and Zacian was really cool in my opinion. So don't sleep on Zacian. It's a really powerful mon, and it can, like, if put in the right position, it's very hard to beat, especially with terrestrialization, like Terra Ground, Terra Water, hard to remove with Swords Dance, Terra Fighting, Terra Stellar. Like, Zacian can be hard to deal with. So I know I talked a little bit more about Zacian than the other restricted, but Zacian is just a really cool restricted, and it needs some respect put on its name, because I think that it's A tier. Personally, when I use it, it feels like an A tier mon, but overall, I think as a general aspect, like from the community, it's gonna be probably a B tier, just because a lot of people don't know how to properly use it. But of course, you know, I'm gonna be showcasing a new Zacian team that I have built around it. This Zacian is not complete. It needs I'm actually gonna put it in D tier because it's a wannabe. It's not unviable, because this Zacian can actually hold an item like Clear Amulet, and while it's not as fast or hit as hard as this one, if you want just a pure fairy restricted that can actually hit pretty hard, I still think it's kind of better than these, right? Like, in my opinion, like, I would take this Zacian, maybe not over Solgaleo, but over these. This Zacian is still a better restricted than those, and plus it's not affected by Clear Amulet, and it gets things like Wild Charge, of course Stab on Play Rough. You can run like Terra Fairy and just like nuke stuff with Terra Fairy, Play Rough, and just outspeed a lot of the format. It's actually pretty good. Like, But of course, people are not gonna try it over this Zacian, but I think it can like have its own niche. I think Zamazenta is gonna be A tier. I think it's right up there with Kyogre. I think it's better than Kyogre though. This thing just had a its resurgence in this game after its poor performance in Sword and Shield. Getting body turns out giving it body press is all it needed, right, for it to be viable. And now it's ignoring Incineroar and actually threatening Incineroar with a 1 KO with body press, especially if it's next to Chien-Pao, even max bulk. Incineroar can't survive that, and Incineroar is forced to Terra, right? And when you Terra Incineroar, and this thing has a Chien-Pao on his team, and it's running Throat Chop. Now you're just weak to Throat Chop, right? Or if any dark type attacks like Dark Urshifu, now your Incineroar just gets one shot by a dark type attack. So that's the kind of pressure that this thing likes to put on with body press. You can also make things Terra into Fairy, which then you can hit with your Steel type stab, right? So Zamazenta is really cool in this format, and it's really consistent. And I honestly believe that it was gonna win Worlds last year, but we'll see, because I believe this Worlds this year is gonna be double restricted. So we'll see how good it is playing alongside other restrictors, because it's already really good. So imagine just throwing this thing on there and it has like body press pressure as well as wide guard, and you pair it next to like a Miraidon or a Koraidon or a Calyrex Shadow, Calyrex Ice. Like, it's gonna be really good. So I think it's A tier in my opinion. This I want to say it's this Zamazenta is gonna be F tier. It's just pure fighting, but it's while it is faster, well, it does have an niche because it's faster than Zamazenta. I think you should just use this. It doesn't play differently. Like this Zacian plays differently from this Zacian, but this Zamazenta doesn't play too much different from this. It just really doesn't want to set up. You can run something like Stella fighting close combat and like a focus sash, and that can be pretty decent. It is a lot faster than this Zamazenta, so it does have that going for it. But other than that, I don't think it's that good. But I don't think it's F tier, because a focus sash Terra fighting close combat can remove some things, right? Eternatus, I think that it's gonna be, I think this bond is good. I think a lot of people aren't exploring it right now, so I'm gonna put it at the back of B tier. I'm saying people haven't explored it, but I haven't done it myself. But I'm actually crafting a team around it, and I'm doing some testing, and it feels okay, right? It doesn't feel like it only can fit on one team, because I've tied out a couple different cores with it, like a Firewater Grass core, and then a Hyper Offense core with like Chi-Yu and stuff like that. Then of course you have the occasional people that like to play stall. I'm not a proponent of stall. I don't really believe in stall. I don't believe it can win anything major, right? It's not like one of those strategies that I think favors formats, and it really is just people that are kind of like, not saying they're lazy, but they don't really want to use their skill to win the game. They want to kind of play like on just surviving and your opponent missing attacks, like the Mux, Smurgle, or Chansey Shuckle stuff. It falls into that category of a stall like that, right? So I don't really use it with like the Cosmic Power, Toxic, and Flamethrower stuff that you would recover, as you see people use. I think it needs to be used into its offense, like with Choice Specs, Choice Scarf, stuff like that on Chi-Yu teams, or even with the Firewater Grass Court Balance team and stuff like that. I think it can be good. So I am going to showcase a team built around it, because I think it's a good mon. I think Poison and Dragon is really cool and unique restricted typing, and I think that it can threaten a lot of different things in the format. Being able to hit Calyrex when it likes to Terra into Fairy with poison type damage is really solid too. And also you threaten Miraidon, right, with Dynamax Cannon, especially if you like Choice Scarf, you outspeed it. Next you have Calyrex Ice. Calyrex Ice is gonna be, I'm not gonna put it above Miraidon, because Miraidon just won Worlds, but this thing is so strong. Like, it feels really good, and it's one of those Trick Room mons that while you see it and you think that they need to set up Trick Room in order to beat you, Calyrex Ice does not need Trick Room to beat you. It can have just a good Terra, survive like any major attack. It's very hard to just one-shot this thing with something that's not like Fire Terror, Heat Wave in the Sun from like Chi-Yu, or like Flare Blitz from like Koraidon, right? Or like Terra Ghost +1 Astra Barrage from Calyrex Shadow. It's hard to just one-shot this thing, right? So with a good Terra, like, it doesn't have to be in Trick Room, and it's still dealing big damage back to you. And then also, if you don't taunt it, it can set up its own Trick Room and then just outspeed you the next turn and just do massive amounts of damage. So it's a really good mon, and the meta really revolves around this and its twin, Calyrex Shadow. I think Calyrex Shadow is a little bit better, because Calyrex Shadow is immediately threatening, and Calyrex Ice has to move secondly or set up Trick Room to be as threatening as it's gonna be, which is hard to stop it from doing that. But this thing just hits the field and it's threatening like KOs, right? Immediately, you have to respect it, and it's very hard for a lot of people to counter. And I think the meta is pretty much, gonna revolve around these three. And what counters do you have that are gonna stop these, right? And if you are gonna use some of these things that are under it, what do you have on your team that's gonna counter these and stop these from having like the success that they want to have, right? So you have to take that into account when you're not using these three and you're trying to like build something around something else, that you're gonna run into them, and how you're gonna deal with them is gonna be huge. So, and let's not forget about this Calyrex form. I think it's the worst out of the the incomplete mons that need a fusion to make them better, or just another form. But it is better than these, of course, because these can't really do damage. But that's gonna be it for this list. Let me know what you guys think below. This is really fun making these, and like I said, I don't mind making these. If you guys like this type of content, then go ahead and let me know with a comment. But subscribe, turn those post notifications, and leave a like. And let me know if you guys agree with this list, if you would change anything, if you would lower anything or raise anything. Let me know in the comments below. But that's gonna be it for this video. Thank you guys for staying to the end, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Stay tuned, more videos soon. Deuces.